for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back, everybody. JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Thanks for being with us on the program.
You know what I'm doing on a Friday?
What are you doing?
Slapping a bass.
Oh, yeah. One of the great bass slappers of all time, Flea. Come on. Let's get it going. Also, underrated acting career.
Yes.
In Point Break.
Pretty good.
As one of the, I think he's listed as like tweaker number one. It was like him and Anthony Kiedis are like.
So he was playing himself in the movie.
He was. He's him and Anthony Kiedis, if you recall, were part of the one of the drug busts. I think that Patrick Swayze. Patrick Swayze is in the movie, of course, but Johnny Utah, of course. He's a local in the NFL. He was a local in the NFL.
That's
JJ, right?
Covered him extensively.
Oh my goodness! Happy
Great
Friday!
movie, by the way.
Happy Friday to you, everybody. That's where our brains go. We go to a lot of the same places. BYU and Houston have just tipped off 3 or 4 minutes ago. JJ, a little score update here for us at the.
BYU fans, you're probably watching the game and not listening, but if there are some of you that can't watch it yet, you're on your way home. They're down 9-0 early. 15:37 left in the first half.
That's early.
Houston 9, BYU nothing.
No problem. Yeah, what's the other semifinal? Arizona, Texas Tech, right?
Arizona, Texas Tech at 7:30 p.m. as soon as this one ends.
I just can't see Arizona giving Tech much of a fit, but there you go. We'll keep you updated throughout the rest of this hour. But joining us on the program right now, it is a hockey night in Utah, and the Utah Hockey Club is going to be firing it up here. You've got Jazz and Utah Hockey tonight on our family of stations, and the Hockey Club is in Seattle taking on the Kraken. That's one that I think a lot of people look at and they want to get those 2 points. Our program is brought to you by G2G Bars, all natural ingredients and no preservatives. Travis Yost, who has joined the program many times with us, breaking down the NHL here for us on TSN. On the program again. Travis, thanks for being with us, man. How are you?
Via con Dios, brothers. How you guys doing? Happy Friday.
There you go. Via con Dios, man. Listen, I think Point Break is right in our wheelhouse for this age group. I don't know. Other people are like, they already made the remake of it. That means that's a bad news if they've already made the remake.
That was a terrible idea. But
it was awful, yeah.
You can't make it better than the original.
There's certain movies you don't make remakes of. Point Break's one of them.
Yep.
I had to cringe my way through the last remake of the Beverly Hills Cop. That's another one, too.
Yeah, those are in our era. Those are in our era, and that I think it's two things. It makes you feel old because they're remaking a movie that doesn't feel like it's that old. But also, Patrick Swayze is unreplaceable. He's no longer with us. You can't just roll it out and be like, "Well, we'll make a better version of it." Come on, you can't do that kind of stuff to us. But we digress on a Friday. Travis, what do you think about this Utah Hockey Club right now? What do you make of this team as they make a push here, a couple points behind both Calgary and Vancouver in that last spot to maybe sneak in a wild card in the playoffs?
It's kind of been like this for like 4 months now, huh? I remember
Right.
I actually wrote about Utah this week because one, they're not dead, right? They're still very much alive.
Yes,
and
they are.
We can get into how noisy the NHL standings is with the third point, the overtime point, and how consolidated these teams are right now, and the challenges with really leapfrogging two teams, right? And it's not just them. You got St. Louis right on Utah's tail as well. So it's really a 4-team race for that final spot, assuming Minnesota gets the first wild card spot. But, I keep coming back to this. The Western Conference is very top-heavy, and it's been pretty clear since I filed back in, December that we knew at least 7 of the 8 Western Conference playoff teams from effectively Winnipeg through Minnesota. And it was just going to be a fight, a bit of a rock fight, to be honest, for that second wild card spot. And you look at that group of 4 teams, Vancouver, that has just been a debacle all season long. Probably the most talent across the lineup, but the least effective of the 4. You've got a St. Louis team that's a top 10 even strength team in the league, but they have the single worst special teams combination you can find in the NHL. That's a great way to lose points in the standings. You've got a Calgary team that flat out cannot score a goal, but they've gotten fantastic goaltending through Dustin Wolf. And you've got, for my money, and it's convenient talking to you guys, but for my money, the 8th best team when healthy this year has been Utah. I emphasize when healthy because we saw this team when when Cooley went down, and really, I think more so Dylan Ginther's injury, they struggled mightily, and they sacrificed points in the standings as a result. But, I mean, they are still very much alive, and it's games exactly like the setup tonight where you've got a challenged Seattle team that Utah, if they're serious about, putting a bow on this season and actually sprinting to the playoffs over the next 17 games, the Kraken are a team you have to beat. They are not good. You're on the road. This is a very challenged opponent. Utah has to take care of business. It's these types of games that really do make or break this stretch run to the playoffs. And if Utah can't get over the hump in games like this, they're just not going to get there, period.
So you referred to this as a rock fight. Of these four teams, which team is most well-equipped to win this rock fight?
So the easy answer, if you sorry about that. If you were to ask me who's the most talented of the four, I think it's Vancouver. If you ask me right now if I had to put my chips on a team, I would put it on Utah. I think when they have been healthy, they have been the best of that group of four. I have no confidence in St. Louis's power play or penalty kill. And most importantly, like one of the big things, and we talked about this last offseason, even throughout this season, one of the big hallmark indicators of a quality team is that they can play competitively and outscore you at even strength. And that is absolutely the case for Utah. Utah is actually pretty comparable to a team like the Vegas Golden Knights at even strength this year, which is a pretty remarkable comparison, I think. You can make a similar argument for the Blues, but when I look at this Utah team, they have three capable defensive pairings, especially with the return of Durzi into the top four. And they've got at least three capable forward lines. If you can roll three forward lines, three pairings, and now a freshly extended goaltender who's been a top 8 goaltender in the league this year, in Karel Vishmelka, like that, you have the recipe of exactly what you would want as a playoff contender. And quite frankly, if you looked at these standings and you allocated one of those regulation losses in January or February, you just one game from a regulation loss to a regulation win, you're looking at the standings a lot differently from a Utah fan perspective, because they're on top of Vancouver, they're ahead of St. Louis, they're basically neck and neck with Calgary for that last spot. So they've got a little work to do, and I know they're a little bit behind where Calgary is right now in the standings, but I am more confident in the capabilities of Utah even over the next 17 games than I am of the Flames. But these are exactly the type of games you cannot lose. You cannot lose, in mid-March to an underperforming opponent like Seattle. It's a must. At this point, they're close to all must-wins, but this game definitely is a must-win Friday night.
Travis Yost, TSN, of course. You can find his byline there. Anything NHL related, and they do a phenomenal job, of course. If you're going to want to educate yourself on the hockey side of things, go right there to tsn.com and get more. But this one, I think people look at it and they go, hey, you got to beat the Kraken, but then they have to go Vancouver, and then they have to go to Edmonton. In these 3-game stretch here, we were chatting with the coach Bear Tourney yesterday, and he said, look, we already know what the setup is of that Vancouver game and how big of a deal it is, but there's no way that you can go into these 3 games, beat Vancouver, but then lose the other 2 games and feel great about it. The reality of a team being back 2 points and needing to get that final playoff spot, are the odds just? I mean, you said that they can do it, obviously, and being healthy has been a huge part of us being able to watch this team have some success. But it seems like Calgary and Vancouver are just maintaining that pace, like you were saying. It's just been a few weeks of the exact same standings, despite the fact that Utah's had a really, really great stretch.
Well, this is beauty in the eye of the beholder. The NHL loves this. They love what they believe this looks like incredible parity. These teams that are incapable of separating. And to some degree, it does make for a pretty incredible end of regular season finish. The other side of that coin is because you've got this overtime point and, one of every 6-7 games goes to overtime, and all these teams play each other, especially intra-conference, 6-7 times within the division, 3 to 4 times within the conference. It is so hard to make up ground on teams in your conference without going on an absolute tear, because these teams play each other and they accumulate points, and sometimes the games they play are worth 3 points and not 2. And I could go for 4 hours about why the NHL needs to change their scoring system and have it reflect something a lot more similar to what you guys saw in the Four Nations, the 3-2-1, where you get more points for winning in regulation. You don't get an extra point allocated if the games go to overtime or shootout. The reason why I bring that up, though, is it does create a bit of a false parity where it is really hard to separate from these two teams. So, when you're late in the playoff race and bidding a wild card spot, it absolutely comes down to a few key critical components. Who are you playing on the schedule, right? Obviously, it goes without saying a game like against Vancouver or a Calgary at this point is absolutely critical. But you also need regulation wins, right? Yeah, an overtime win and a shootout win, no one's going to turn their nose at unless you're playing Vancouver or Calgary and you're only gaining net 1 point on them, right? So you really need not just to win the large majority of these games. You need to start winning in regulation if you want to start separating. And that's what all 4 of these teams have been incapable of doing. It's been 1 step forward, 1 step back. And to some degree, I will be a little fair to this group of teams. You can nitpick every single one of them, I think rightfully so. I mean, we're not talking about Stanley Cup contenders in this group of 4. But they also play in a very top-heavy conference. So a good chunk of the games for the Blues and Utah and Calgary, they're coming against, teams like Vegas and Colorado, in Winnipeg, in Minnesota. And it's a different type of gauntlet in the West. In the East, you got a much more, I would say, flat level of talent, and even a tighter distribution of talent across those teams in the Eastern Conference. In the West, it is very top-heavy. So ultimately, these teams have been decided by, can you beat the heck out of the Anaheim Ducks and San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks, and can you at least hold down the fort against these elite teams? One of the most interesting things, I just wanted to get to this real quick, when I mentioned I wrote about Utah and this playoff race in the West, if you just look at Calgary, St. Louis, Utah, and Vancouver, only how they've performed against the top 7 playoff teams in the West, the entrenched, playoff teams that we know are going there. Every single one of them has about somewhere between a -20 to a -22 goal differential. So by and large, these are very similar teams. They've got strengths, they've got weaknesses, but again, when healthy, I do think Utah is actually the most capable of these 4 teams.
What did you think of what Utah did or didn't do at the trade deadline?
2 thoughts. Number one, I think if you're a Utah fan, and you need a little history or context here, but I think I made this comment the day of the trade deadline. I don't remember a season in my entire life of covering the NHL or working in the league where the Arizona Coyotes were extending players with term because they wanted to stay with the franchise, right? And you can sign a veteran defenseman like Olli Mata for 3 years. Okay, maybe he gets that contract in Phoenix, but Karl Vejmelka making a long-term career commitment to playing with this organization as a top 8 goalie in the league this year, I think that's a really big long-term statement about the viability of this team and their willingness to compete. I think their approach at the trade deadline was a little softer, not versus what I expected, but I would say more so understandably, right? You're not going to be a buyer, especially considering you squeak into the playoffs. It is found money to the nth degree if you're Utah, but you're likely drawn in against Vegas or Winnipeg. I mean, they're going to be extreme underdogs in that scenario. So you don't really want to deploy a significant amount of capital at the trade deadline unless you think you have a decent shot of either contending now or can acquire a player that's part of your long-term future, not a rental. But I think Utah looked at the math on the other side, two-sided coin, same point, right? I think Utah looked at the math of this conference and said, hey, look, we're clearly not one of the best 7 teams in this conference, but do we have a chance to be number 8? Like, could we actually give this a run of it? And I think that actually informed some of what they did, which was, let's keep the guys in place that we want here longer term. We're still building for the future. It's not about year one in Utah, whether or not this stretch run breaks favorably or not. However, we're not dead yet, and we want to make a go at it. And instead of trading a player like Vejmelka, who could have commanded something, I think, very reasonable or very meaningful in terms of either draft picks or a package from several teams around the league who are in need of a goaltender upgrade, starting with the Edmonton Oilers, by the way. Utah took the other road, and I think that's a totally appropriate approach, right? It's saying, hey, we're betting on this guy long term. And by the way, if we have upside in March and in April of 2025 and somehow squeak into the playoffs, boy, what would that mean for this city and this franchise? And I think that's the right approach.
Travis Yost, TSN.com is where you can find his byline, and he's always good to be able to break down a lot of the new stuff that's going on here for us locally because of this hockey club that has come in, and it's an awesome time for them to be able to have everybody healthy and playing really, really good hockey. So looking forward to it. They've got the Kraken tonight up there in Seattle. Travis, thanks so much for joining us today, man. We appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Take care.
There you go. Travis Yost. I was looking at it, and the Kraken are 9-10 points behind the hockey club.
They're not good. He's right. You can't lose these games now with a playoff push going on.
But they only have one fewer win than the hockey club. And part of it is because the hockey club sends games to
overtime games.
They've been getting those that funny third point, right, that you can get, that extra 1 point.
Those matter.
We are at the Doug Smith Mitsubishi here in American Fork. By the way, did things get a little bit better for BYU? They were down 9-0.
No, real quick update. BYU's trailing Houston. The Houston Cougars lead BYU 19-6 with 10:58 left to go in the first half. BYU starters have gone a combined 0 for 8 in the first half. None of them scored. The only scoring for BYU is coming from Trey Stewart and Dawson Baker. Who would have guessed that?
Not the ones you want to lean on. 6 points in the first 10 minutes of the game are also not good.
We warned you. BYU's having a phenomenal year. They're going to the NCAA tournament. They got a chance to go to the Sweet 16, but you're facing a team that has a good chance to win a national championship.
Yeah.
And today is a reality check.
Yeah. Even our buddy Jonathan Tavernari goes, I think the other foot might be dropping tonight. And that's okay. Like I said,
it's fine.
This is
okay.
a team.
You're
this
right.
is a team in the NCAA tournament. If you were going to meet them in the NCAA tournament, it would likely be in the Elite Eight or the Final Four. That's where you'd meet them.
If you want to win a national championship, these are the kind of teams you have to go through to do it.
Bonafide number 1 seed, Houston. So, all right, we'll come back. Scotty G. Around the corner, going to chat with him about the Aggies and their shot. We'll give you a score update as well between BYU and Houston. So stay right here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest name.
You're locked into JJ and Alex with the insight and analysis on the teams you can't live without. Presented by G2G Bars. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome back. JJ and Alex, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
I thought we agreed we were going to remove the horns from that song.
And what is this, the MIDI version of where
did that come from? Who did that?
Not Tears for Fears. I mean, I guess. It sounds like him, but I don't know what edition this is. Maybe this is like the remastered version of it. They're like the 30th edition, the 30th anniversary album.
They should be fired.
And they're in Tears for Fears' biggest triumph. Speaking of biggest triumph, this will be a big one for BYU if they could beat Houston. But, man, it's been a slow start for the Cougs. 4 for 21 from the field are BYU. They now have 3 3-pointers, 2 of them just right off the bat here by Richie Saunders in the last 2 minutes. But
Alex, we're watching BYU try to play offense against this Houston team, and it is rough.
Difficult. 23-14 right now with 6 minutes left. That's a low point total for a Cougar team that's been lighting it up. But Houston is, if not the best defensive team in the country, I think they're top 2 or 3, but they are, of course, a bona fide number 1 seed. So there's your Big 12 championship tournament update. Joining us right now in Las Vegas, he is Scott Garrard, Hanson Scotty, of course, every week or every day right here on the station right before our program. So noon to 3. Scotty, it's been a few days in Vegas, man. Are you got your sea legs down there?
Oh, yeah. No. I'm, I don't know if it's a sign of getting older or what the situation is, but I used to really enjoy Vegas. And look, I'm not going to partake on the overly seedy side, but, boy, I'd find myself at a table. And now
sure,
I'm
why
like,
not?
you know what? I'm in my hotel room at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Well, unless Utah State's starting at 10 o'clock. Yeah, dude, I'm boring now. Like those days are way in the rearview mirror.
I think
Vegas is a young man's game.
Yeah, we've all turned that corner where you're like, you know what? It's nice. If you're in Vegas for work, it's like, man, somebody else is paying for my hotel room, and I'm not going to have a kid knock on my door and try to get in my bed at 4 in the morning, you know, and like, my goodness, it's those are the little things that you enjoy now. So, but yes, the Utah State Aggies and the Colorado State Rams. This is a fun one because you've got Utah State, who've probably got on their mind like, hey man, we got the doors blown off of us by this Colorado State team. We're not going to allow that to happen again. And Colorado State's firmly in the camp of, if we don't win as many games as possible, we have no shot getting in the NCAA tournament. This is a really freaking good Colorado State Rams team, though.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw some metrics on the hottest teams in college basketball over the last 2.5, 3 weeks, and Colorado State is number 1 and BYU is number 2. And I mean, this is a team that's reeled off 9 in a row. In fact, their last loss was in Logan against Utah State. And since then, they have not lost. And frankly, they've blown the doors off teams, including the rematch with Utah State, as you mentioned, in Fort Collins, when they just shot the lights out. It's a team that's shooting almost 50% from 3 in that 9-game stretch. They're just hitting their stride. If you get a chance to watch it tonight, there's a bona fide NBA player on that team called Nick Clifford, a transfer from Colorado. Really good player. Really good opportunity here for Utah State, though, to solidify themselves in the NCAA tournament. I think they're in pretty good shape in terms of that. Whether, you know, right now I think it's more about seeding, but you got a Colorado State team that's now worked their way onto the bubble, and so they're trying to get themselves into the tournament, and they have to win this game tonight, whereas Utah State would like to win this game tonight. So it'll be interesting to see, but revenge certainly on the mind of the Aggies. They did not like getting embarrassed the way that they did.
You know, this is a Utah State team that started the season off so well under Jared Calhoun, and they eventually worked their way into being a top 25 team this season. They're in the top of the Mountain West race. And then towards the end of the season, Scotty, it just feels like I don't know, and I want to learn from you what's been going on with the team, but, you know, they lost 3 straight road games to end the season, and last night was not their best performance either. What's going on with this Aggie team where they haven't been able to play at that same pace that they were playing at when they reached the top 25 level in midway through the season?
Well, it's a fair question. They're getting a little bit more sloppy with the basketball. The turnovers are increasing, and I think a lot of that is the fact that so much of their offense is generated by the frantic way they play defense. With that matchup zone, they create turnovers off that matchup zone and then get steals, and then they get a lot of buckets in transition. When you start to take that away and you figure out that zone defense, which when you start to play teams 2 or 3 times a year, you start to figure out, the book gets out on how to attack that matchup zone. Then you're getting buckets against their defense, and then you're forcing Utah State to play a more half-court style of offense, which is not something that they really like to do. They can do it, but they like to get out, and they like to run, and they like fast break buckets as much as possible. If you slow the game down and kind of muddy it up like UNLV did last night, then it's a little bit harder for them. And so that's going to be the key in this game, because Colorado State did just that to them in Colorado State. They did not allow them to run. They didn't turn the ball over. They were able to dice up Utah State's offense. And then Colorado State defensively is a really good team. If they force you into the half court, they've got size, they've got length, and so they can really start to create problems for you. I mentioned that Nick Clifford. He took a matchup against Ian Martinez personally and did everything he could to shut him out. He eventually got his points, but it wasn't a very efficient night for Ian. So that's key on their mind tonight. You got to run good sets, you got to get good looks, and then on the defensive side, you got to find a way to force some turnovers to get out in the open court.
Last year this time, Danny Sprinkle in that team, you know, obviously they were, regular season champs. You see, how good they were, but that tournament, it doesn't matter. I don't care who you are. It's just like every one of these conference tournaments, these teams that show up are funny, because it's like where they are right now. And that team last year ended up going to overtime with Fresno State, and then they ended up losing in the championship to San Diego State. And there's this like feeling of, okay, did they run out of gas, or like what is it? But then they go on to win their first NCAA tournament game in a long time, and then fall to Purdue in that second round. But I mean, like, all things said, like where that team was pretty similar. Like, they were losing some games toward the end of the year, and everybody goes, well, you got to be peaking exactly where they're at and kind of get there. But where is this team then on that scale? When you talk about where Jared Calhoun's guys are, and not necessarily compared to last year, but really kind of on that trajectory to be peaking, or are they falling off more?
Well, I mean, it's a fair question to ask, and certainly they're not playing their best basketball right now. But I will say this, once they get into the NCAA tournament and a team faces that zone for the first time, you might see Utah State play really well in that game because teams aren't used to it. So Colorado State's going to see this zone defense for the third time. They're going to be ready for it. There's really nothing you can throw at them that they haven't already seen and experienced in those previous 3 games. So, I mean, there's really nothing you can do. But there's another thing to kind of look at it on film and then actually go up against it. It wouldn't surprise me to see Utah State pull off a first-round victory just because what they do is so unique defensively that it might throw a team off in that first round of the NCAA tournament. So while I think that they've got a huge struggle in front of them tonight, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won, it wouldn't surprise me if they lost, but I fully anticipate we're going to have a barn burner that's going to go right down to the wire. If Utah State loses this game, totally understandable. It wouldn't shock me one bit. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they were a 9 seed or even a 10 seed coming up next week, and they got the first-round matchup. Maybe an 8-9 matchup with BYU. I'm kidding. BYU's not going to fall to an 8 now. Might be a 10-7 matchup, though.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that if it happened.
I know.
That'd be pretty
heavens.
cool. The Aggies do have reason for confidence, although that game in Fort Collins didn't go well. They did get a win over the Rams in Logan. What did they do in that game against the Rams that allowed them to be successful that maybe they could duplicate tonight?
Yeah, forced turnovers. They got a bunch of turnovers in that first game. It was in Logan, and so you know how that crowd gets up there, and so they just feasted on Colorado State to the point where that game, they were very similar games in terms of Colorado State threw a haymaker in Fort Collins, and Utah State never responded. Utah State, almost the exact same thing. They're hitting every 3 out there imaginable in the first half. I mean, they're just knocking down shot after shot after shot, and they go up by nearly 20 points against Colorado State. But the Rams were able to reel them back in a little bit and make it a closer game in the second half than Utah State was able to do. So very similar feels, especially including the first half, how they felt. The second halves were a little different. Utah State was never able to really make a run against the Rams, whereas Colorado State was able to make that game reasonably close. So I would say the first 10, 15, the first 10 minutes of this game is going to be really fascinating. See what the score is at the under 12 timeout, and I think that'll be a good indication of how that game's going to go.
Scotty G's got the call, of course, tonight. This Utah State Aggies team firing things up. You're going to get your pregame right here on the KSL Sports Zone, and then, of course, tip-off at 10 p.m. Friday will turn to Saturday here in Utah on that call, Scotty. So on that, careful on that way back home, back to the Cirque, the adults-only casino down there.
Hey, I think we're the real reason I thought we were going to come on and talk a little Seahawks football. I mean, Cooper Kupp.
Oh,
man,
hey, now,
fired up?
Hey, listen, we had we broke the news. We're very excited about it, and then it turned into us talking about Cooper Kupp's Yakima history, and then of course moving to Cheney where he went to school. And then,
Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, buy your season tickets
I know,
now.
That's the hard part is that like you get a guy like Cooper Kupp, and I'm like, great. Now who's gonna freaking throw to him? Like,
yeah, we know who.
I don't know if Sam Darnold is gonna make me.
You know he isn't.
You get Jaron Hall in there.
Dude,
why not?
Sam Darnold.
Look at me puff
screams,
out my chest.
You know what?
We got Bo Nix.
JJ, you and I, we know a little bit about what the Seahawks are going to go through because this Sam Darnold signing sounds a lot like the Case Keenum one.
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
It does feel a lot like that.
One good year, and you go all in on a guy.
We put up with a decade of mediocre quarterback play. You can take your turn now, Seahawks fan.
I would take whatever version of Kyle Orton there is right now.
Kyle Orton.
Guys, get me a
his beard game was elite.
Draft me a Brock Osweiler and
Stop it. See what I'm talking about?
Oh my goodness.
Enjoy
Scotty,
it.
Have fun down there, man. Good luck on the call tonight.
Will do. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Scotty.
I love having Scotty on, man.
I'm jealous he's down there.
Are you? I mean, the basketball
tournament.
No,
the tournaments are so, like the Mountain West tournament is so much fun. And there's so many things going on in that building.
I hate the Thomas and Mack Center.
The different fans.
For sure.
Like the New Mexico fans are just like, oh.
Yeah. I hate the Thomas and Mack Center, but like this is when I'm okay with it. You
know
what I mean? Like
it's fun getting all these different teams in the building. And it's just a fun week to be down there. A lot of basketball, a lot of hoops going on. You can cover one game and then bounce and go to the other one. So Utah Valley's playing at 7 tonight down in Vegas at the Orleans against Seattle U.
Is that the championship? No, that's
It's semifinals.
Yeah, ooh.
A lot of hoop going on down in Vegas.
Let's go.
They got to move the Big 12. They never will. They're entrenched in Kansas City. I get it. It's a nice place.
Why, though?
But, man, they need to move it to Vegas.
If somebody's going to move something somewhere, it's Brett Yormark. Although he did move the Big 12 Media Day to Vegas, and then he moved it right back to Frisco.
Because the Big 10 took it over.
And I get it. The Big 12 is headquartered in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all right? But, come on, man. Go for the glitz and glam.
Why, though? There's only one team there now.
All right, we'll take the break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this hour next. We're at the Doug Smith Mitsubishi here in American Fork. We'll get you a hockey club update and much more. So stay right here. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Wrapping up the hour with our picks for the best and worst moments on today's show. As JJ and Alex want to hear your best and worst of the day.
All right, everybody, welcome back. JJ and Alex, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone, final segment of the hour. Our best and worst every day is brought to you by the good folks at the Doug Smith family of dealerships, and it just so happens to be a fortuitous moment. We are at the Doug Smith Mitsubishi here in American Fork, a place where we love to be because Chris is one of our dudes that we love to chat with every day, and anytime we get down here, it's awesome. Our best and worst today, I'll just go with the best and worst all at the same time. Did you see the back and forth between DeMarcus Lawrence and
I sure did.
And Micah Parsons?
Yes.
I want all of that reality show.
That is so Cowboys.
They're going back and forth, and he's like, "Yeah, just you know what? I just felt like I knew I wasn't gonna win there, right? I wanted to play for Dallas, but I just knew I wasn't gonna win a Super Bowl there." And then Micah Parsons was like, "Yeah, bro, aren't you going out there? It sounds like some real pity party. It sounds like envy and jealousy all at the same time." And he's all, maybe. The best was DeMarcus Lawrence's response back, which was, hey, maybe if you spent more time tweeting and less time tweeting and more time winning, I'd still be there. That was the burn of the century. I loved it. So best
Cowboys.
and worst, all at once. Yeah. Oh yeah. Please live all this out on social media, Cowboy fans. Please. All right. There's your best and worst. Let's chat one more time here with Chris Smith.
I have to mention the beautiful cherry red Outlander PHEV with a black top.
Now, how's that black
right
top
here
work?
when you walk in here?
What do you call it? I feel like there's an industry name for that because it's like you got this two-tone, but the second tone is not like through the middle on the none of that. It's the very top. It's the very top there. It's that black, and then the rest of the body's red. It's sweet, man.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a European thing, or with like the Land Rover, Range Rover, different things like that. Kind of a high-end paint on the top. It's on the Blackout Edition, and it's also on the SEL Platinum Edition.
Nice.
So, yeah, and they're gorgeous. It makes it look really good.
Really pretty.
My wife fell in love with the pearl white, which is phenomenal with the black trim and everything.
Color,
Oh, my gosh.
We already knew.
It's phenomenal. But I walked in, I was like, "Ooh, I like that red."
Yeah,
if
the
that would have
red's
been
really
me,
good looking.
you might have been able to sell me on that red color. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it does look good.
If somebody's coming down and they want to test drive a Outlander or a Mirage, or they want to sit down and go, hey, tell me a little bit more about what Mitsubishi's doing, because every one of these brand new Mitsubishis, I don't care what model it is 10 years, 100,000 miles, right?
And they make it so simple. They offer a great car. They lay out everything. Everything's covered for those first 5 years, 60,000 miles, and the balance on the engine, transmission, driveline, up to the 10-year, 100,000 mile to come with every new car. And it's just really cut and dry. There's no smoke and mirrors or anything like that. So.
You know what I love too is that if you look on the sticker, at least right here on the model in front of us, which I think is let me see here. Oh, this is the Outlander Sport.
That's the Outlander Sport. A little bit
smaller. So it kind of has a little more of that. Yeah, it has a little bit more of that, but still all-wheel drive, right?
Yeah, killer all-wheel drive. They're amazing.
That's how they made their bones,
never really talked about the all-wheel drive. It's very similar to the Subaru all-wheel drive.
And it's a really nice orange. Of course, they probably don't call it orange. No. They call it the Sunshine Orange. Yeah, look at that.
Yep.
Sunshine Orange metallic.
Orange,
really pretty. But also, look at all the stars on here. This is the stars that are on here are your safety ratings.
Right.
And you get 5 stars on the big ones. You go, hey, this is not just a car that is just out there. This thing is passing all of the tests with flying colors.
It is.
It's the safest you can get.
Yeah, that Institute of Insurance, they really look at the insurance part of it and making sure they're safer for people to drive.
You got some great deals now, too. You mentioned 9,000 off of the
9,000
Outlander
off.
with the gas ones.
Yeah.
We were talking about in the last segment. That's like a quarter
almost a third off
I
for
know.
the normal MSRP.
It is, yeah, and that just started today till the end of the month, and I've got 5 of them left, and it's just a killer deal. So
come test drive it Saturday, you won't regret it.
Let's get those killer deals. Let's go, Chris. Thanks for hanging out with us.
All right,
man.
I really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Every time you come down.
We'll
here,
be back
so
again
thank you
soon.
So much.
There you go, Chris Smith, the Doug Smith Subaru right here. Or the Doug Smith Mitsubishi here in American Fork. All you have to do is just come down to the American Fork Main Street exit. Come down about east about a half a mile. You're going to find it. All right. Hey, Connor's our tech down here today. He does a phenomenal job as usual. Alex is our producer. We'll be back again. More to go. 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.